What's going on, everybody, and welcome into this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you. It is Saturday, August 9th, 2025, and we're breaking down a Cardinals win over the Cubs from Friday night at Busch Stadium as Michael McGreevy showed some real growth and maturity in comparison to some of his recent outings. He had an outing back in June against the Cubs in which he struggled, and then his last couple of starts prior to last night were tougher outings for Michael McGreevy. But he was on his game last night, other than a ball that hit him square in the chest, and he ended up being okay from that. There wasn't a lot that the Cubs were able to do that was very damaging against him. Over 6 innings, he scattered 6 hits, didn't allow a run, and only walked one batter. Not necessarily going to be a huge strikeout guy. We know that about Michael McGreevy, but 6 strong for him as the Cardinals get the better of the Cubs by a score of 5-0. And on the offensive side of things, you saw some really encouraging signs from Jordan Walker, who hits a home run in the game, goes 3 for 4, another 3-hit game for him. And Alec Burleson had a nice day at the dish, going 3 for 4 as well. There are other standout performers from this game. I'm not going to try to jinx it here, but the new look bullpen after the Cardinals made their moves at the trade deadline, kind of intriguing, right? Matt Swanson looks like he is potentially going to be a dude in this bullpen, not just for the rest of the season, but as you start to think about what 2026 could look like, it's very interesting the way that his season has gone. He hasn't performed poorly, really, at any point for the Cardinals, but he wasn't one of those guys that, in the roles that he was getting, didn't really seem like he was very highly considered, at least in terms of having the potential to be a real force in the late innings. A guy that could be used in leverage, a guy that could potentially have 9th inning closing pitcher type stuff. That just wasn't the way that Matt Swanson was used earlier in the season. He would come in, he would pretty much be in there for mop-up duty, and there'd be those days where he'd have to go multiple innings, throw a bunch of pitches, and then it would seem like the next day he would have to be sent back to AAA Memphis so that the Cardinals could continue to churn through that bullpen and just have enough innings to get through whatever game or series or homestand or road trip that they were currently on. And then a few weeks ago, it seemed like the tide started to shift on that because the more and more you saw Matt Swanson, the more consistently he performed. And I remember asking Ollie Marmol a couple of weeks ago, I think on the previous homestand, in a game the Cardinals lost. I'm pretty sure it wasn't a great night, but Matt Swanson really stood out as somebody that continued to put his best foot forward, and asked Ollie if we might see him, have an opportunity to start filling in some different roles as the trade deadline approached and as they continued to evaluate guys in the bullpen. And he said wholeheartedly, yeah. I mean, that's something that you definitely want to look for with Matt Swanson, because he just continued to do well in those lower leverage spots, in those multi-inning spots. And so you ask a little bit more of him. And now we're on the other side of the trade deadline, and we've seen Matt Swanson really kind of settle in, I think, as one of the standouts kind of around the area that the trade deadline was happening. And certainly since then, the velocity is something that really stands out from Matt Swanson that I knew he threw hard. A lot of those guys throw hard, but the extent to which he has really turned into a swing and miss guy, especially over the last few outings since the trade deadline in particular, we've seen him pitch 3 times. He's gone an inning and 2/3, allowing 1 hit with 2 strikeouts, had a 2-inning outing, allowing 1 hit with 4 strikeouts. And then the game against the Cubs last night, through an inning of work in total, allowed 1 hit, but 2 strikeouts. So that's 8 Ks over the last 4 2/3 from him. And we're seeing at times upper 90s, triple-digit stuff with the fastball. Very impressed with what the Cardinals are getting out of Matt Swanson right now. And he wasn't the only guy last night that was good out of that bullpen. Jojo Romero doing his thing. And Riley O'Brien, I know it wasn't a save situation, but another scoreless appearance for him. He's got his ERA down to 1.78 for the season. And it's almost like sometimes it works backwards. When you have an opening in the late innings and you don't really have any obvious proven options to fill it, sometimes you just go, hey, who's the guy with the best stuff? Okay, Riley O'Brien, we know he's got good stuff. Let's see what he does in the opportunity. And it almost propels a guy's career forward because he's getting those opportunities where the games are the most meaningful and you're the guy out there recording the final outs. It's like it seems to give Riley O'Brien a little bit of extra juice, locks him into exactly who he's supposed to be. It's been an impressive aspect of what we've seen from the Cardinal bullpen. So really appreciated that. And of course, I mentioned it off the top with Michael McGreevy. He's going to be in this rotation next year. There is no doubt about that. The Cardinals do not have the organizational pitching depth to look sideways at Michael McGreevy, even though he has had some outings recently that were not as productive. Faced the Padres a couple of times in a row, and that's a good lineup. but he gave up 7 runs against them on July the 27th. And then on August 2nd, he got through 6 innings in that game, but gave up 4 earned runs and a homer in that contest. This was a much better performance from him. It was certainly better than the June 24th appearance against the Cubs back again at Busch Stadium, where he was unable to get through 5 innings, gave up 5 earned runs on that day. But last night was able to work everything. And I saw it pointed out by STL Cup of Joe on Twitter, the changeup that he threw to a left-handed batter. And I'm sure you've seen the video by now on social media. If not, it's floating around there. What an incredible pitch. I'm not saying like the changeup is always going to be that for McGreevy, but that in particular showed he's sharp with it. And that was a really effective pitch in that moment. Just that diving away from the left-handed batter, kind of tumbling off the plate. Really, really a good pitch, and something that McGreevy certainly has in his arsenal and can continue to use. So he improves to 4-2 on the season with St. Louis. He's 4.40 with the ERA as a Cardinal this year. He's going to continue to get opportunities, and he's going to come into spring training next year not really looking for a spot. That's probably going to be his mentality. But he's going to be earmarked for one in the Cardinal rotation. And as I said all along, it took a little bit longer than maybe I thought, because I figured the Cardinals would roll with Michaelis, would roll with guys like Fetty from the beginning of the season. And when they inevitably seemed like broke down, they would be quick to put McGreevy in. And it just took about 3 starts too long to do it with Eric Fetty. But at the end of the day, my predictions and my thoughts on the season we're going to see from Michael McGreevy are pretty much going to be spot on. I said all along, guys, he's going to have a dozen or more starts with the Cardinals. And right now he's certainly on a pace to end up with about 13, 14 starts. And then he also had that bulk relief appearance against the Mets back on, I believe it was May the 4th. The only reason I remembered that date because it was the same night the Blues lost. Anyway, we don't need to talk about that here. So good signs from McGreevy, and doing it against the Cubs makes it even better. Good signs from the offense too last night. 4 for 9 with runners in scoring position, and Jordan Walker coming up with some key hits. Obviously, his home run was just an absolute mammoth shot to left field, and you love seeing him connect for a swing like that. And don't look now, but I really do feel like it's okay to start to believe in a little bit of the recent approach changes that we're seeing from Jordan Walker. I know there's a lot of topics of conversation and debate on Twitter and social media when it comes to Jordan Walker and whether his recent surge is more about luck or more about something tangible that he has been doing differently. But even as he has not had consistent playing time since his return from the injured list shortly after the All-Star break, remember he had the appendicitis, didn't get the appendix removed, which I thought was a little bit odd, but then was totally recovered from that and was down there in the minors rehabbing. I think it was Springfield for several weeks after he was basically healthy. But the Cardinals just didn't feel like he was producing down there. He didn't look good in Springfield. And so they were kind of biding their time with the rehab assignment, waited until after the All-Star break, called him back up, really just out of necessity because they weren't going to option him, I don't think, at that point in time. Even though they didn't see a ton of signs from his production in Springfield, they were just going to call him up and he was going to ride the bench or play when he got an opportunity to do so. But shortly thereafter, he started to turn things around. And I know that when you look at a guy like Jordan Walker, you're thinking the power has got to be a big part of his game, right? And that's sort of been a big point of contention when it comes to the Cardinals and the way that they have handled him ever since calling him up a few years ago and famously saying, hey, we're going to send him back down to the minors because he needs to stop hitting the ball on the ground so much. He needs to get the ball in the air. I think at this point, you just have to let Jordan Walker be who Jordan Walker is, and the Cardinals have, I think, realized that to this point. And look, as a player who is just still 23 years old, he is going to continue to mature and kind of grow into what power looks like for him. Really, it's just about continuing to have confident plate approach, which I think we're certainly seeing from Jordan Walker since he returned on the 18th of July. Not quite a month yet, but about 3 weeks. We've seen Jordan Walker take 71 plate appearances. He's batting .318. He's getting on base at a .366 OBP, and he's slugging .455, even without a ton of power. He's hit 6 doubles, and last night his first home run in that stretch while stealing a couple of bases and taking a handful of walks. Strikeouts still a little elevated, 17 strikeouts in that frame, but you're really seeing the approach, I think, from at-bat to at-bat be a lot more consistent for Jordan Walker, and he's seeing the fruits of that labor. I understand that Oliver Marmol has a difficult job. It's not easy to figure out who to play in your lineup from night to night when you have Newt Barr, you have Herrera, you have Victor Scott, you have Alec Burleson basically entrenched as an everyday outfielder, as Oli Marmol has reiterated whenever he's asked about that topic. And so you just really don't have daily opportunity for everybody out there. But I think it needs to continue to mean that, you know what? Lars Nootbaar might not play every single day. Victor Scott might not play every single day. Don't agree with Garrett Hampson being in the lineup last night, by the way. He had a bunt that was part of a rally for the Cardinals. Cardinals were doing a nice job bunting against Matt Boyd last night. Just, hey, if you can't hit him, bunt on him and make him make a throw, and he wasn't really able to do that. So I applaud the strategy. Was cool seeing Yachty, of course, in the dugout last night. Maybe he put the bunt play on. Who knows? But I do look at Jordan Walker as a different story from the rest of the guys kind of oscillating in and out for playing time and opportunity in that outfield. He needs to play. He has the highest ceiling of all of these hitters, in my opinion. I don't know that there's a high percentage chance of him meeting that ceiling and reaching it. Maybe not even within this season, but just in general. But the ceiling is still there. In my opinion, he's got to be a guy that's in there 5+ times a week, almost regardless of matchup. And the slight benefit that you might gain from a right-handed batter, Garrett Hampson, being in the lineup against the lefty, it's not worth it to me. I would play Nootbaar in center field more if I felt I needed to find other ways to align that outfield. Could it mean maybe a less productive defensive outfield if Nootbaar's in center and Walker is in right and Burleson's in left, or Ivan Herrera's in left, and then you do have a DH opportunity? Yeah, that's going to be a little bit tricky from time to time, but I think it's too important. Again, not beating the drum. Walker's going to sit from time to time. You just don't have the ability with how many guys they have for the number of spots to play him every single day. But 5+ times a week, I think, is really something that should be made the goal for Jordan Walker. I say this while knowing that it's not going to be easy, because there's always going to be somebody that's going to be held out. And I'm not one of these guys that'll hate on Victor Scott or tell you that Lars Nootbaar shouldn't be playing. No, all these guys should be getting opportunities, and that's what makes it tricky. But again, Alec Burleson, a guy 3 for 4 last night. When you look at the OPSs on this Cardinals team, Herrera still leads the way as he's kind of dwindled back down a bit, but is in the 850 range. And Wilson Contreras is number 2 at 794. Burleson's right behind him at 791. Donovan, kind of struggling recently, down to a 751 on base. That'd be a good on base. 751 OPS. I would move Donovan down in the lineup. I wouldn't hesitate to do that, and I would be okay with them plugging in, Victor Scott II and seeing, even though he's not somebody that's been really producing at the plate, maybe in the way that we talked about Riley O'Brien, giving the role and then seeing a guy grow into it. That could be something that could happen for VS too. I would definitely consider it, because I think the upside of him taking walks, just getting on base and then stealing second as he can do so regularly could be something that right on the beginning of the game could get the other team on their heels, could get the pitching staff on their heels, could get the defense a little bit antsy. Maybe they try to be too fine with it and make an error. I think Victor Scott can invite that type of chaos to a ball game. And although I wasn't always on board with the argument this season, because his numbers, frankly, don't dictate batting leadoff, but his skill set does. And the fact that Brendan Donovan right now is struggling out of that spot as well would be a reason for me to potentially see the Cardinals shake things up. We will see exactly what it looks like tonight as they take on a right-handed pitcher, Colin Ray. I'm recording this a little bit late in the afternoon, and I know my recording schedule has not been as regular or consistent recently, but with all the things I've got going on, I'm just trying to make sure we get the show out so that anybody who really does enjoy it can make sure to listen to it on their own time. No lineups, though, yet as of this recording for tonight's game, but I'll be curious to see. I imagine Nootbaar will be in there. I think he's got a good numbers in a short sample against the opposing starter. Victor probably back in there. Try to load in the lefties as much as you can, but I would like to see Ollie Marmol find a way to get Jordan Walker in there after 2 consecutive 3-hit games back to back. But that's going to do it real quick for this edition of the show. Again, hope you're enjoying the new video format. I know for those podcast listeners that want a 30, 40 hour long show, this may not be the style you like as much, but it is a little bit difficult to talk on video without flubbing or messing up or choking without a drink of water for an hour long. And so we're just trying some things out and hoping you guys stick with the podcast, as I think we can continue to make it better and bigger and more exciting than it's ever been before. So appreciate you guys so much for sticking with me. That's going to do it for this edition of the show, and we will talk to you next time on b-schaeff Daily. Peace.